Well, good morning, everybody. Today is June 21st, which in the Northern Hemisphere is the summer solstice. I'm going to take you to my Twitter feed here. One of my favorite follows is Brian Brettschneider. He's a fantastic meteorologist and climatologist out of Alaska, and he posts some really great stuff. And I'm going to show you a tweet of his that he shares that looks at the number of daylight hours on the summer solstice. So you can kind of look at each ring and match up the number of hours. So, for example, right here where I am in East Central Illinois, we're at 15 hours of sunlight today. The farther north you go, the greater those numbers. And of course, remember, if you're inside the Arctic Circle, that would be 24 hours of sunshine on a day like today. So it's a pretty amazing day in the Northern Hemisphere. The sun's rays reach their maximum angle in the sky. And just remember that if you live south of the Tropic of Cancer, which is down here, you experience direct sun all the time. But if you live north of it, you never do. The sun is always in the southern hemisphere of the sky at noon. But this will be the day that it's at the highest angle. So I think where I live today, it's somewhere like 73 degrees above the horizon at noon. Okay. Now it's kind of neat to see what this means. So I'm going to take you here to a GOES full disk image, and you can see the sun is rising here this morning over our two main tropical systems. This one named Brett. And the angle at which the sun's rays strike the earth is perpendicular here. So it's coming in just like this, right on the Tropic of Cancer, which is 23.5 degrees north latitude. And we call it the solstice meaning sun stop, because this is the farthest in the Northern Hemisphere the sun's rays will ever be direct. Starting today and going into tomorrow, they'll just slowly creep their way back toward our equinox, which is when they hit directly on the equator, and then go toward the winter solstice for the Northern Hemisphere, where they come down here. And this angle that you see of the sun's rays striking the earth will then go like this across the planet. So just wanted to share with you what that means. So as you see here, here's the day-night line. It's got its greatest angle today. We're watching an upper level low that's spinning here over parts of the southeast. Some interesting news with this. It is expected to meander a bit farther to the north than originally projected. This is the remnants of last night's severe weather that came through parts of the Dakotas, putting down some large hail. And as I just animate this back into last night and then coming back to today, this is going to be a very important feature. We've talked about it for weeks now. It's this ridge that's building over Mexico and Texas. Its position as it fully becomes established is going to be critical to kind of understand, everything about what this upcoming pattern is going to do. So there's a deep trough in the west, ejecting like this. There's a large ridge in this area and a cutoff low here. And in the middle, this odd saddle point where all of it is just, this lacking flow. So you can see as the sun was setting last night, there's still quite a bit of wildfire smoke from the Canadian fires earlier in June still sitting in this area. Okay, last 48 hours of total accumulated precipitation. We have already seen the models putting down, not the models, but this system putting down a very heavy rainfall in parts of North South Carolina down to Georgia, but the wraparound hitting the Ohio River, coming into Kentucky, Tennessee, northern Alabama, and Georgia. Heavy rain again last night on the northern, not the northern, but the kind of eastern side, coming over the northern side of that ridge right into this area of Louisiana, causing more flooding. But we still have more to go here. So we were talking about the threat of 4 to possibly 10 inches of rain in this part of North Carolina. It surely looks like we're going to continue to see more of that. But as the jet kind of digs in here, making it cool in the west, of course, we're going to watch the storms continue to pop over the next couple of days in this area. So our all hazards weather map, we still have kind of in the high desert areas here in the west, the freeze warnings that are out, but there's an interesting forecast this morning that just showed up, a frost advisory in the Snake River Valley. And this would be extremely late in this area, so we needed to monitor these temperatures very carefully to see if there was any frost damage here, and we'll do that analysis later. But you can see that the heat that is underneath that large ridge still has a large section of Texas under excessive heat watch and warning and advisories. Flood watches have been posted here. Air quality issues continue to be throughout the Midwest. Severe thunderstorm watch still sits for this part of Kansas. Now, I wanted to show you something. I'm going to take you to San Angelo, Texas. This is my forecasting system. And as you look here, over the next 7 days under that ridge, their average temperature is 92 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 12 degrees above average. And you can just kind of see each day what the projected high temperatures are expected to be. And what's interesting about this is if you look at their temperature history, we had a warm episode back in early May, but most of the rest of May into June has been cooler than normal. And this has been a continuing theme for the southern tier of the United States until just recently when they've cranked up. Now on my graphics, I like to label everything that's over 90. It gets kind of busy when you're down into Texas, but I also keep some stats up here. Number of days above 100, number of days above 70 and 90, you can kind of just see what it is. And so far, their warmest temperature, 112.8. That will likely increase later on this week with some of the high temperatures that are expected. So just amazing to see what this increase in temperature is going to do. Now the ridge causing it, again, is right here, very clearly defined in the flow. Here's the broader trough in the west and the very fast winds that are creating all those storms in the northern plains coming out of the Intermountain West up into the Canadian Prairie. And here's our cutoff low that just continues to sit and spin, and a couple of tropical systems to be monitoring here. Now, I'm going to go straight to the tropics because there's a couple things about the tropics that might interact with this pattern I want to bring up. It's not going to come from Brett. Brett right now has been kind of downgraded in its expectations. It was projected to become a hurricane, but as it crosses the Lesser Antilles, they've now kept it at tropical storm strength, and that's primarily because of how strong the winds are in the Caribbean right now. But Brett isn't the only system we're watching. We have one that's following it here that is really tracing out more of the path around the subtropical ridge, which is faded north and is much weaker down here. So it's going to slowly just pull this toward the north. But I'm watching this right in this area as well. And if I take you over there to the East Pacific, there is some concern about what could be happening with the tropical system coming out in this direction and what it might do to interact with the ridge that is currently in place here. And that interaction is going to be actually very important to see, because if this disrupts this ridge in any way, it could really shift the forecast in a way that is not well seen at this point. So we're going to have to watch that interaction carefully. But here's what the upper level heights are going to be doing. And remember, we don't use upper level heights to resolve hurricanes very well. We tend to look in the lower atmosphere to see them. But if we look at the kind of trough and ridge pattern through Wednesday into Thursday and Friday, what we're watching very carefully is this deeper trough eject into the northern plains and then possibly move into the Midwest. Now, the thing that's out ahead of it causing problems is this lingering trough here. If this was gone and there was a ridge of high pressure sitting in this area, we would open up this section of the country to an outbreak of strong to severe storms and a lot of heavy rain. But as it stands going into Saturday and then Sunday, this shortwave trough, which was so promising in what it could eventually do to some of the driest parts of the Midwest, is going to underperform. And that's my analysis of it, watching the model trends of it. It's going to do a lot here in the kind of western Corn Belt, the northern plains, the upper Midwest. But when you get into this section of the country, it's not going to be able to do much. And again, I mentioned this yesterday. Despite the ridge here, the flow coming around the backside helping this out, the downstream trough, remember, flow comes around these like this. So we're not going to spend the days before this gets here opening up the Gulf of Mexico. The flow instead comes over the ridge like this. It comes around the trough like that. And that's wrong. That's backwards, if you want to think of it that way, for returning moisture into this area to deliver some storms. It will make storms. They will come out ahead of this, but they're not going to be the kind that just break a drought that goes in this area. And then as the pattern just evolves here, what's different? No big Canadian ridge. The ridge is now over Texas. That's new, of course. We've talked about that for a couple of weeks now. But this flow just continues to have this look with a trough east and a trough west. And unfortunately, we normally think about flow like this giving us thunderstorm activity in the Midwest, not when you have a setup where the months leading up to it have had deep troughs and there's drier air there. But as we play this out through the 28th, 29th, and 30th, what we normally do at this time of year is we start looking for what's called the 588 decameter line. This is where the atmospheric thickness is 5,880 meters from the surface up to where the pressure is 500 millibars. So it's this guy right here. And normally that is the line on which you follow to see where the ridge riding storms are going to be in this particular situation. Not really seeing this line moving its way up farther and farther to the north because of a lack of heat, one, as we get out here to the beginning of July, and two, there's no moisture in here for it to make storms anyway. So where the storm's going to be? Well, today, this is what the Storm Prediction Center's got. Really going to light up the plains once again. Tomorrow on the 22nd, again in the high and western plains. And then we get out here to the 23rd. And it's kind of the same corridor that we're going to watch over the next few days. So the big ridge here, trough ejecting, but weak flow out ahead of it just confines all of this to this region. Our high-res models have got a pretty good handle on this. Let's start off at 6 a.m. here. as we just play forward, a couple things to note. You're going to see a lot of storms popping in this area. We're going to watch the upper level low just meander up here toward the New England. So more scattered, locally heavy rainfall with some storms here. We're going to watch the storms pop all throughout the plains tonight, all into this area. Big storms, potentially a lot of hail with this, of course. And then we're going to keep an eye out on Texas to see if this storm cluster does, in fact, just roll right through the state toward the Gulf. But other than that, it's this low here, pressing up into parts of Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Storms popping again on Thursday in the northern plains. And that kind of seems to be the cadence of this pattern through Friday. Just more storms here. Locally, very heavy rainfall and a low that's kind of falling apart by the weekend here, but still maintaining enough integrity to stop the flow of return of moisture into this area. So what that gives us is our newest 7-day outlook from the WPC. You can see up here this whole contour line encloses everywhere we expect to get at least 1.5 inches. There will be places that are missed because these are thunderstorms, but still very wet. And because that upper level low is meandering north, there's still a broad area through here that could pick up 1, 2, 3 inches of rainfall. In the middle is where the places that are going to be missed. And do you notice where they've now increased the thunderstorm activity? That's following that 588 line right in through here. So let's now see the European model solution for this. The next 7 days. A lot of the same story here. Here comes the weekend chances of storms coming out of Minnesota into Iowa, Missouri, trying to get into Wisconsin and Illinois. But the model did trend drier in Wisconsin, Illinois, and parts of Iowa. So there's a full week. Here's what the model difference is between the 0Z run, which is the latest available, and the 12Z, which was the one before it. So remember, you look, this is where the model trended drier. These are the colors where it trended wetter. You can see a broad area here that trended wetter overall. But the key thing a lot of folks in the drought area are looking at is the drier shots right in through this area. So that drier section. Same thing for parts of Nebraska and South Dakota as well. Okay, that's not to ignore any other place, but let's keep moving and get on to the GFS. So let's play this out. Here we get out there to the same 1 week outlook so I can compare models. That's the European. Here's the GFS. We'll do that again. The European versus the GFS. But as you know, when we get out here this far in the models, the smartest thing to do is look at the ensembles. So next map, 10-day probability of getting at least 1 inch of rainfall. And if you're wondering if anything really changed from yesterday, not too much. We've just increased it, I think, here in New England. So overall, a very similar outlook for that probability of 1 inch, which is lowest right into this area. This spot increased, I should mention that. But other than that, not too much change. 2 inches and 4 inches. So why it backed off here? Because we've already had 2.5 days of rainfall in this area. So a lot of that's already out of there. The drier spots continue to be in through here, this part of the Canadian prairie. And then, of course, down here in the desert southwest. But this is not unexpected in this area for this time of year. Looking out there at week 2, this is what the precipitation patterns look like. The CPC is still quite generous with the rainfall coming over this area. We still see the European model with a drier look. Doesn't mean there won't be storms. It is just not the full-on drought-breaking hope that we would need in this area as this takes us all the way out. Week 2, by the way, gets you out to July the 4th. So here we now see the GFS ensemble. Again, it's wettest in this area. We do see a drier signal, though, continuing to show up here. Remember, I know I've said this many times, but the GFS is way too dry down here in the southeast. Just a kind of a statistical problem with it. Okay, now temperatures. So taking a look at today's temperatures right now, Snake River Valley, it would appear that this morning we did avoid a widespread frost event based upon the ASOS data in this area. But I'll go look carefully at the RTMA to see what happened in this region, look at the surface observations. But I do want to show you that this morning, at 6:10 a.m., we didn't get out of the 80s in parts of Texas. And that's where the heat's really going to be on. So today's high temperatures, cool southeast under the low, 90s in the Midwest, 110 in southern Texas, very cold throughout much of the West for this time of year. This is Thursday. Again, the storms are expected in this corridor. We go into Friday, saddle point, warmth, sunshine through the haze of the smoke, but 90s again, cool east, cool west where the trough is pulling through. There's Saturday's temperatures, getting into Sunday. This will be when we watch the trough try to come through and increase storm chances across the Midwest. Then we go into Monday into Tuesday. I think the only thing I can tell you about the drought area is that we don't break away fully into excessive heat. The excessive heat is down here. So if you just keep the pattern doing this, there's no real reason to just break over and get super hot. I'm talking upper 90s and triple digits, and that is a major difference from major drought episodes historically in this area. But let's go out there and look at the temperature pattern through the next 15 days. So remember, this is a 5-day sliding window of average temperature anomalies. I just stopped it here on day 5 through 10, which gets you out to July the 1st, and then day 10 through 15, which takes us out there through July the 4th. And that's what the temperatures are looking like, July the 4th and 5th actually. So we keep seeing that same pattern showing up in the models. Last thing I'd like to talk to you about today is this. This is our latest sea surface temperature anomaly map. Overall, the story we've been carrying for the last several weeks is still holding true with this pattern. But something I want to share with you, and we'll talk more about this on Thursday's in-depth report. The newest update from the from BOM, the Bureau of Meteorology out of Australia, they have actually gone even higher toward this fall and early winter on the ocean temperatures in Nina region 3.4. That's right here, okay? And they have now put this up here at 3 degrees C above average, which would make this, possibly make this, if it hits that, the strongest in terms of ocean temperatures El Nino on record. It has rapidly developed over the last few months, and they're expecting it to continue to rise like this. And the concern is, let's just say that that is the dominant pattern. This is what September, October, and November precipitation historically correlates with El Nino. So everywhere that you see it in the warmer colors, that's where it tends to be wetter. And so we just need to watch out for very wet conditions late in the year in the south, coming out of the southwest. Now remember, this is September, October, November, getting into harvest time for a big section of the country, or winter wheat planting in places here, but drier in the Pacific Northwest. And this is mostly driven by a strong subtropical jet. So we'll watch for that, keep seeing what that's going to mean going forward. But well, it's important just to know that there are forecasts out there calling for a Super Nino. I'll leave it there. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk tomorrow. Thanks.